welcome to the show, Heather Peterson.
Thank you.
She she was dealing with some hypothyroidism and hormone imbalances. So welcome. Thank you for being on the show.
Thanks for having
I'm
me.
excited. Um, so yeah, if you can go back and give us a little story of the symptoms that you had, the ones that you can remember, the details if you can, and then how you got here to the perfect storm, and then what you did to recover.
Sure.
Awesome.
Well, my journey, the whole TMS world started in 2009. I was
Yep.
actually summiting up a mountain. I was a big trail runner at the time and ended up with vertigo and wasn't sure what was happening. That was my first symptom. I, I thought maybe, I was pregnant, maybe I had allergies, maybe I needed glasses. My vision was going crazy. I saw a neurologist whose diagnosis at the end of that conclusion was, "You're a dizzy girl."
Hmm.
And that kind of put me on this tailspin of new symptoms reoccurring. And so then it was chronic fatigue, and then it was hormone imbalance and adrenal problems and needing all these supplements and doing all these tests and being put on prescriptions for the rest of my life, right? And,
Man, yeah.
and so it was just a tailspin of one doctor after another, another prescription, another, we're going to try this, we're going to try that. Hundreds of dollars in supplements and allergy tests, and
Yep.
no one really could figure out what I was. I was an enigma, right? And my mom told me, "Well, I have chronic fatigue, so it makes sense that you would." And we passed that down.
Yep.
And so I believe that hook, line, and sinker, that was just my fate. And it wasn't until 2015, my husband was walking this parallel path with me. He was diagnosed with ankylosing spondylitis, which, for those of you who don't know, is a um, incurable back pain, right?
Yep.
Um, and so we're both walking this path of two perfectly healthy people whose uh, health just went totally in the toilet real quick.
Yep.
We weren't aware of, the stresses that were occurring in our lives, and how they paralleled our health conditions. And so in 2015, we were in Las Vegas at a conference for financial services, and they do um, health and wellness sessions that I like to attend. And so I went to one, and they talked about how stress affects the body. And that
Yep.
made more sense to me than anything. And the different personality traits and the type A personality and the perfectionism. And I was shocked, totally shocked, because I mean, he was preaching to the choir, like he was talking straight to me. And I was seeing my
Yep.
husband and all of these things. And um, I mean, it was a lonely road for a long time for both of us. I mean, 6 years of just spinning our wheels, and not showing up as the spouse either of us needed at the time. Our kids, we had 5 young kids, and they didn't know, what's wrong with dad, what's wrong with mom, why didn't you guys feel good, and I'm pulling over on the side of the road driving my kids to practice just to get my bearings. So I'm just, my vertigo's going crazy. I'm so exhausted that I'm having to
You're
set.
surviving. You're
I'm
surviving daily.
Yes,
Yeah.
really in survival mode. We both were. And so when we were introduced to, Dr. Sarno and then Steve Ozanich, and then all of this work started propelling, we started getting better. And so I, want to shout that from the rooftops
Yeah.
from then on, of what we're capable of.
Yeah. Did you end up going down any of the Facebook group rabbit holes?
I personally didn't, but my husband did, and it was terrible.
Oh.
It was terrible. People with ankylosing spondylitis are committed to that disease,
Yep.
and they don't want to hear anything else. They say, "You're going to get this, and then this is going to happen, and then you're just going to spiral, and we're all going to be miserable forever." And he tried to get out in there after and say, "Look, there's hope for you guys, and this is my story, and this is what happened." And he was shit
Wow.
upon
Yep.
by these people. They did not want to hear that they could get better. It was mind-boggling to see how
Well,
sad it is.
what I hate is when some of these moderators that are, oh, some of them are sick themselves because they've been miserable for 26 years. They think that everybody else should also be miserable, right? Because they really believe that, and they're putting it upon themselves to be in control of, let's say like a group might have 40,000 subscribers. Like they're literally writing the future for these people
Yeah.
by putting, all this brainwashing content on there that's creating these people's realities.
Yeah.
And it's crazy how this is allowed.
Yeah. I mean, he didn't have half the symptoms that were on that group until he started reading them. And then what do
Yeah.
you know? One thing after another, he was spiraling and he ended up being in more severe pain after he got on the group than before.
Yep, exactly. So what made you think, like, looking back, what things in your life contributed to your perfect storm, where you guys were sick for the 6 years?
hmm Well, so me and my husband were married in 2009. We were both previously married, previously divorced. We both had kind of been through the same spiral of betrayal, um,
Yeah.
drug and alcohol addiction on the other end of with our spouses. Um, for me, I left my faith that I had grown up in for 24 years. That was a huge heartbreak for me to
Yeah.
step away from that. Blending a family. He had 3 kids, I had one, and then we had one together. Blending a family, raising kids together, still dealing with all the trauma with our kids, what they've been through, what they're consistently going through with their
Yeah.
other parents and other people in their lives. My husband's was he started his own firm. He's a financial advisor, and he was betrayed by the people that he worked with. When he
Mm,
decided to jump ship and start his own firm, he was betrayed by them. His brother took his own life in 2009. And so we had just a whirlwind of hell for several years that we were just barely keeping our head above water with.
yeah. And it's interesting. It always comes from somewhere. When somebody's sick with, you name it, like
Mhm.
for me, I believe that there's no limit. There's no test that you need to do. I think it's a mind body space. And, it's, you name it. It always comes from somewhere. Doesn't just come from the air, right?
Mhm.
And then you can right away, if I hear somebody that's sick, or if I'm like waiting somewhere, or somebody sparks a conversation and they talk about their health, I go, "Oh, so what have you been dealing with lately? Have you been dealing with a lot of blue, blue, blah, blue?" And they'd be like, "Yeah, I did." Sometimes they go, "No, no, no, I'm fine," or "My son is fine. He's actually happy." Are you sure about that? He's really happy. Well, there was this one thing. He was with this girl for like 9 years. She was a narcissist, and it was a horrible thing. I'm like, well,
There
usually
you go.
there's always something that
Mhm.
you can find.
Yeah.
So yeah, and then you're dealing with this for 6 years, and your symptoms, were they also adding more fire to,
Oh, yeah,
the trauma?
because I mean, you're dealing with trauma, but then you're also dealing, you're uncovering childhood trauma, but then you're witnessing within your own children and you're
Yep,
trying to make sense and you're trying to reason, you're trying not to be angry and feel all these, low vibrational emotions of guilt and shame and fear and grief.
yeah,
And you can't even process it because you don't feel good enough to. We
yeah.
went through all of Dr. Sarno's books and Steve Ozanich, and we even spoke to Steve regularly um,
Nice.
with my
Okay.
husband. Yeah. So, I mean, we were doing everything in our power to understand this mind body connection and how it was unfolding for us. And you know what? Because for me, I was like, well, my husband had a traumatic childhood. I mean, he was
Yeah,
beat by his stepdad, and he, his parents were divorced, and there was a lot of trauma there. Whereas I came from a very loving home with great parents, and a great childhood. But then you really dig a little deeper, you peel back some layers, and you realize, oh, what I thought was so great actually was a lot of conditioning that made me the
yeah.
way I am, and the perfectionism and this and that. And a lot of that's religion,
Right.
stuff that you dive into and you don't really even know is there until you peel back those layers and you get a little deeper. And so even if you haven't had these big T traumas, you have had perceived trauma.
Right. For me, when I was dealing with my 70 symptoms, I was able to heal from them and able to live life and be recovered and live life like normally. But then I realized there was more healing to be done.
Mm-hmm.
And I started to look back into my childhood and growing up that there's more stuff that I could dig into and feel and almost look at it as a curious observer. But I was able to do it in a better position than before, where I was so sensitive. Any digging would just re-traumatize
Oh yeah,
myself.
very triggering.
So yeah, so then you were doing the work. Did you have any people kind of think like, what are you doing? This is all hogwash, or people that were like,
Yes. In fact, actually, my sister is a nurse practitioner,
oh,
and we really
yeah,
got into it in 2020 when everything blew up,
yeah,
and I was trying to understand what is happening, what is happening going on in this political environment and the vaccine and everything. And I had my point of view and maybe my thoughts, and I was trying to figure that out. And she had her medical view, and we weren't seeing eye to eye. And we had to take a whole year of a break. And that was a traumatic thing for me. My sister, who I loved and respected, and
yeah,
she could only see the medical model because that's what she knows, right? And I had been through all this stuff to uncover the medical model, and she didn't really want to look at it, and so that was hurtful for me. And it took me
yeah,
a long time to accept that her reality is not the same as mine. And we finally came to a place where we greatly respect each other. She's a great nurse, and she's actually showing all of her patients, there might be a different thing to look at here versus what's actually going on. And so it's been so fun to have those conversations with her and see things through a different lens.
yeah. It can be quite a challenge, and you can kind of see like after you recovered, you can kind of see how other people's uh like how things affect them, and it makes sense. Everything makes sense. Like for me, I can see I look at other people's buckets, how full they are, and why
Hmm.
they're sick. And some other people, like my dad or friends, where things just don't affect them as much, and everything makes sense.
Hmm.
And knowing I know this now, and you can almost predict it when you see other people go, you know what, they should be fine. And like some people, their COVID when they got it, it affected them for a couple of weeks, and then they had the after effects, and then they got long COVID. And then there's people that were able to have it for a day or two or a week. And then there was people like me who I'm sure I had it, but I might have felt like maybe 2% of it. But
Yeah.
then you see how regulated people, right? Or do the mind body approach, or are well maintained, or feeling the feelings, don't have the load, they're able to process things with ease. And others, you can see them even with, if you look at your family, friends, like the evidence is everywhere.
Oh yeah,
Have you
because
seen
the fear
that?
drives your immune system down
Yeah,
into the toilet, right? And I got COVID for the first time ever after that disagreement with my sister.
right,
And and I could look back and I'm like, wow, because one day later after that fight, I was able to regulate my nervous system and I was fine. But
right,
for one whole day, I was severely sick. And it's just
right.
amazing how the body can overcome or go in the opposite direction and just be sick for a long time without that regulation of that nervous system.
Yeah, well, especially when you get the news constantly hammering in the fear, right? And then people are wearing the mask and cleaning their hands. You can't go to a gas station, and you got to clean. Everything is fear, fear, fear.
Hmm.
And it's like, well, how many years of that fear campaign were we going through? And you could see it with people that, the people that, well, I mean, me too. I went through it too, right? I was scared, and it was triggering.
Yeah.
And somehow I was able to expose myself to the fear, so I became indifferent to it. And because of that, it didn't affect me
Hmm.
negatively. Or I don't even think I had it, but I'm sure I have, and it didn't affect me negatively. But you can see how the fear, it puts a number on your body, it puts the loads on, so it can't do what it's meant to do with it with efficiency,
Yeah.
right? And it's it's that simple, but people don't want to believe that. It's like, well, no, it's got to be complicated. Give me something complicated, then I'll believe you. But if
Yeah.
you tell them about this mind body space, they think, oh, hogwash. I don't want to believe that.
Uh-huh. Yeah. And it's until they have their own experience and they see it and they recognize the emotion associated with the symptom that they finally put two and two together and they say, wow, if I was really honest with myself, then I can see how this completely manifests itself. But it's the people
Right.
who don't want to look in the mirror. They don't want to recognize what might have happened or what's currently going on or their stress. They think their stress is their stress load is normal and it's completely dysregulated. And
Yeah.
and so it really takes honesty, looking in the mirror at yourself to see and connect with what is going on.
Yeah. Well, we society normalizes a lot of things because I've noticed before I had my 70 symptoms, I had the regular flu season, cold season, like because I was working in a nursing home, I always got sick and I would last me a month. And then
Mm-hmm.
if somebody else got sick, I got sick again. So that was my normal life, always having the seasonal whatevers,
Mm-hmm.
right? And after I regulated, I never got that stuff. I
Yeah.
never got, I never got sick.
Yeah.
And you know, for me to try to, I had to stop trying to force people to listen to me because that was exhausting. So I thought, you know what? Proof is in the pudding. I'm just going to make noise here with myself, not worry about other people, and maybe people will go, well, maybe he's onto something. Maybe, especially with family, because family, it's
And it's
like,
tricky.
oh, you're on that next protocol again. Oh, you're doing this crazy thing again, right?
Yep.
So,
For sure.
so it's like, okay, I'll just worry about myself, make some noise, and maybe, in time when they're ready, then maybe, they'll see the proof in the pudding, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it can be scary because we love our family. We don't want to see them because we
Suffer.
see the rabbit holes they go down, the doctor's appointments. Oh, you might need surgery or, blah, blah, blah.
Mm-hmm.
That's like, you don't need that. You can just regulate. You can just, so that's a challenge.
Mm-hmm. Yep. But when you're unaware that you're unaware, there's no room for change. You have to become aware that you were unaware. And then
Right.
you can move forward to be aware that you're aware. And that's how you regulate your nervous system is being in awareness that you're even doing it in the first place.
Yeah. I've noticed that, you know, I, I know that I'm not saying anything bad about the majority of doctors. I know they mean to help. They really want to help people, right? But it's just eh, there's not enough awareness about this, right? And then people just write it off, and which is too sad that it's happening. But this is why we're here. I think this is we have a purpose to bring awareness so that people can be like, well, look, she had hypothyroidism, she had hormone issues, and now you're fully recovered. So
Fully.
how's recovery like? What did it feel like coming out of all this stuff?
So really it was like this unraveling that it just this will of, awareness that kept opening up for me. And I would gravitate to one thing or the other. I went to a, a lady who did craniosacral therapy and she said, "Do you understand why you have hypothyroidism, right?" And I said, "No." And she said, "Well, it all has to do with your throat chakra. You're not speaking your truth, And that was like, I didn't want her to tell me that because, I
Yeah,
grew up in a high demand religion where you do what you do and you don't ask questions. And my parents leaned more on the authoritative side because that's how they were raised. And so I recognize that in myself. I try to be an authoritative parent and then I'm aware that I'm doing it, right? And all this generational things that like personality traits that get passed down. It's not genes that get passed down. It is
yeah,
lifestyle. It is personality traits. It's all of these weird habits that we do in our family dynamics. And so when she said you don't speak your truth, that's a big piece of why I got divorced. I wasn't speaking up for myself. And even to this day, it pops up here and there. Oh, there I am again doing the same little habit where I don't speak up for myself. And
yeah,
and so that spoke to me, that emotional component of hypothyroidism. You're not speaking your truth. You're swallowing your hurts. And I really had to do some deep diving and I had to move through all the stages of grief. Like I cried about it, and then I was
Yeah.
angry about it, and I was looking at all the reasons of why I was this way, and I finally got courage to speak my truth, right? And then I could speak in a loving way without it coming across as mean or ill-spirited, right? And so it really
You
gave
had
me
to you had
freedom.
to almost learn to get uncomfortable with speaking your truth, because I
Yes.
noticed, like with people pleasers, like with my wife, she avoids things at all costs because she doesn't like that feeling of the silence after something is said. That's the truth, and the
Mm-hmm.
awkwardness that goes with it. It's like, now I got to deal with this shit. So I'm gonna, you know what, I'm gonna avoid all that, and I'm just gonna stuff it down. And when we stuff it down, we start to fill up our buckets, right? Allostatic loads or baseline starts to push up, and our body isn't able to regulate because it's pulling 747s, right? So
Yeah.
it all makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
We're,
Yeah.
we're pulling out these big planes,
Yeah. And because you're not speaking your truth, but
right?
you're swallowing your truth. And so you're creating cortisol, you're not creating serotonin, you're not creating oxytocin, you are creating an elevated state of fear, resentment, anger, and you're just going to stay in that fight or flight mode until you stop thinking about it, but unconsciously you still are all the time, right?
Oh
And
yeah,
being
all
re
day ruminating. Yeah,
yeah.
it's you're refiring that fire, with the resentment, because
Mhm.
things haven't been resolved because you keep
Mhm.
avoiding, so the resentment grows deeper, and it's like that fucking asshole, he fucking, right? Or my sister, or my fucking brother, or my friends, the in-laws, especially the in-laws, right?
Yeah.
Uh, it just keeps burning while you're doing dishes. You're going for a walk to exercise and to get healthy. But what are you doing? You're stress exercising. You're ruminating about that person at
Yeah.
work or
Oh,
whatever it is. And we're not catching these behavior patterns. We're
mhm.
letting it fuel the fire. You're letting it fuel that baseline up and
Mhm.
up and up. But we never been given a handbook to, well, you got to catch these old behavior patterns. You got to be aware of them. And then not just be aware of them, keep being aware of them and keep changing them, right? And it's like you gotta change your mental diet. You gotta almost get into a bubble temporary for a little bit, just so you can be aware of this stuff. And then eventually you come out, and you gotta be able to feel uncomfortable with saying your truth. So how was that for you? That must have been a challenge.
It was a challenge, and honestly, my husband Billy, um, he took the brunt of that for a
Oh,
minute because I almost did a 180, right? Where I was like quiet little
oh,
sweet thing, to like get out of my effing way. I'm gonna just say what I'm gonna say. And
yeah,
he kind of looked at me like, holy shit, what's going on here? And then I'd feel bad, and then I'd retreat again, and so it was
yeah,
this back and forth, like almost like you're going to go into double Dutch jump rope, like getting ready to do it, and then you get afraid, but then you jump in, and then it just becomes natural, and you calm down and you regulate your nervous system, and you can keep moving and you can keep doing this thing, and it becomes more natural speaking your truth.
yeah, for sure. And catching it and allowing yourself to feel like shit when you have the setback days, and you blow up. And then there's the guilt, like, oh, maybe I was too mean. But all these things that are complicated along the journey,
Oh yeah,
uh, make it, that much more interesting,
for
I guess,
sure.
to say.
I, go ahead.
No, yeah, go ahead. What you're saying?
I was just gonna say, I mean, I was on anxiety and depression medication for years, and I ripped that off like a Band-Aid because I
Wow.
finally stepped into my power. I got off hypothyroid medication. I got off anxiety and depression medication. I was carrying Xanax around in my purse, like I just in case I needed it, and
Did
all
your
of it.
doctor say anything? Did they say, like, how you're doing this at all?
No, no. I mean, my OB is the one who prescribed these things, and she just said, "I understand your lifestyle, and so I'm sure this is just going to be for a while until you get through it." And so she kind of, because she was a midwife, she knew a little bit more about my life, right?
Yeah.
And so, but she didn't really ask any questions. I would just come in and I was like, I don't feel good and I can't do it. And please just help me. Like I was pleading with her, please just help me. I don't want to deal with all these big feelings. And so she
Yeah.
she she did. she did what I asked her to do and more. I mean, I didn't need to be on Xanax. I was numb to the world for a long time. And when I finally got the courage to just say, I don't need any of this shit, I need to just address all of my past and all of my current stressors, it opened up a reservoir of emotions that I was not even prepared for. And I cried.
Did you have any withdrawals from coming off that stuff?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if you're familiar with coming off of that stuff, but you get these weird, like, draining in your face, like you feel like you're going to pass out, but you don't.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. Well,
that
you
was,
hear stories about people dealing with the benzos and doctors not really telling them because they don't seem to know, so they just throw them on these pills, and people get addicted to them, and they have problems getting off, and it just makes things worse. And we go there because we want help, but you know what? I don't think they're very qualified when it comes to things with the mind and even the body. It's sad.
well, sure, because they're not psychologists, they're doctors. And nor is a psychologist a doctor. And so you have to have them meet. You have to have the psychology meet the body, and you have to understand there's a mind and body connection. They are not separate entities, they are one.
Exactly. Then I get sometimes where people are like, well, how are you helping these people? Are you medically trained? I'm like, well, that's exactly what I don't want to be. That's how I'm helping these people. Because those are the
Exactly.
people that say it's hogwash, right? And
Hmm.
it's hard to, and when they're convinced, it's hard to, so I just keep on going.
Well, sure.
So,
And I don't have a psychology degree. I'm not a doctor, but I have experience. And I really, when I
oh,
started being a mind body coach, I had a lot of like, I'm not qualified to teach anybody anything, right? And my husband said to me, if you were severely overweight and you went to somebody for help, would you go to the person who's always been fit, or would you go to the person who lost all the weight?
right. That's
And
like, that's like going to getting heart surgery by a plumber. That's a five-star plumber, by the way, right? It doesn't make any sense.
no. And so I finally got the courage to say, you know what? I do have experience with these things. And people are going to trust me or they're not. They're going to trust the process or they're not. And the people who are desperate enough are the people who find the mind body connection because they've exhausted all their other avenues and in the medical world and medicating themselves and whatnot. And they finally are ready for real lasting change.
Well, you've been through it. The proof is in the pudding, and the brain with me is always looking for evidence that you've been through it. So they'll ask you the questions, and when you can provide the evidence, says, "Yeah, I felt this, and I recovered." So the
Mhm.
proof is in the pudding. I've been there. I've been in the trenches with you, where you are, and that's everything,
Oh,
right?
yeah.
I'd rather like it's like I can ask a person this: would you rather listen to a guy in his truck with two dogs, who's giving advice, who's been through it, or you're going to listen to somebody who's makes $400,000 and went to school? Usually, people go with the person that went to school and makes a ton of money doing it, looks like a professional,
Yeah, and you
unlike a
white
person like
jacket.
me, looks like a hobo in a truck giving advice. I get it, but there is proof in the pudding. It's
Well,
solid
you're
evidence,
you're going to connect with people who have been through it, right? You want to
right?
hear from the people who have been through it. You don't want to hear, here's another pill, here's a surgery, just you'll be fine. I don't know, this is incurable. I mean, which do you want to hear? The definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different result. And so you have to
Yeah.
decide what is it that you want.
Or not expecting a different result, but almost accepting the false reality. Well, this is the way I am. This is how I'm
Mhm.
going to be for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
And that's sad because there's so many lives that are just
Oh.
on hold.
Yeah. I mean, my husband was one of those. I mean, he had the blood markers, right? And for ankylosing spondylitis. And it was really hard for him to accept that he didn't have that. I mean, you have a label, you
Yeah,
have hypothyroidism, you have fibromyalgia, you have whatever. You're speaking it into reality. I have it. It's never going away. You're reaffirming
right.
it in your mind. And so you have to decide, do I have it or am I experiencing it for a time and why? why am I experiencing it? Right. And
Right.
your language is huge.
Yeah, it's everything. Your mindset's, especially, this is where it's hard when your reality is telling you the opposite. It is keeps sending you the doubt, especially if you go on Google with any of these things that you mentioned. If you pick one of those things, and if you were to go on Google, it'll say this is, well, there's no cure, and there's way to manage it with medication, right? And then you're dealing with all these symptoms, and you're going to be the one that is going to walk up the mountain in flip flops and fully recover. Oh, right?
Yep.
We're dealing with so much resistance in this reality. How did what fueled us to get to that other side? And for me, it had to be sticking to an inner knowing, and my I've had to lean on spirituality. That I thought I had it before. I thought,
Mm-hmm.
but this is the gift that was given to me where I was forced to find something inside me. Did you notice that with yourself?
Oh, yeah. I mean, my intuition started just shouting at me where I had been
Yeah.
like, keep it quiet, and let's not listen to that. And so, yeah, intuition was huge. And I could not keep denying it. It was screaming at me, you're on the right path. Keep going, keep going. And I know for every person I work with, it finally clicks for them and they are, they're like, this is right. This is right. I know this is right. And that's how you recover is keeping, a hold of what feels right.
Yep. I'm trying to introduce more of the spiritual side of recovery, not just the mind body thing, because I think it's very important for me. It was what got me to the other side of the invisible bridge, because you're expected to cross this mountain with a drop, and you're like, well, this is what I'm supposed to do. I'm supposed to just jump over this, but I can't. I'm gonna fall. It's 50,000 meters down. I can't. And it's like, no, there's a bridge there, but I don't see the bridge. Well, that's up to you. You have to find that with your beliefs and your faith, and then you're forced to do it, and then you cross that bridge.
Mhm.
And that's what I needed. And without it, I don't think I would have been able to fully recover. Because did you ever see that? Did you ever get the golden nuggets of clarity at times, or the synchronicities
Oh,
while
yeah.
going through this?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I would be led to buy a book and that would just speak right to me. I'm like, oh my gosh, this book is truth. I know it. I
Yeah.
feel it in my soul. This book is speaking truth to me. And then it was just this trajectory of the right information at the right time. And it was all
Right.
coming to me. I wasn't like actively seeking anything out. It was just unfolding for me. And it was complete synchronicities and it was beautiful and I couldn't deny it.
The right time, which is interesting. Every time I was dealing with something, which was a million times through my journey, there was always something that came at the right time within a couple of hours or the next day.
Mhm.
The right people, the right information, the right words, right? That I needed to hear, or somebody's story, or where it just would make me go, oh, okay, keep going.
Mhm.
That's that's where it also helped me cross that bridge.
For
Um,
sure.
there's another thing I think we forgot to talk about. You're talking about you mentioned one of your symptoms. You had a cyst.
Yeah, I mean, I had female cysts that kept reoccurring.
Yeah,
Uh, and that again was painful, right? On one hand, but the doctors are like, well, this is just what happens. It just happens. And that was an unacceptable answer for me. I wanted to know why. Why does it start? Why? How can I prevent it? This is painful. It's not fun. And there was only one time when I ever went in to have it like examined, and the rest of the time they're like, it's just happening. You're just going to have to keep dealing with it, and try this pill, try that. And it just was unacceptable. It was an unacceptable answer. I didn't want to just deal with the symptoms. I wanted to know why it originated. And that's how I felt with every symptom I had. It didn't matter. I mean, the hormone imbalance, the adrenal fatigue, the chronic fatigue, the migraines. I wanted to know, how do I prevent it? Because I don't want to keep
right.
feeling anymore. And so I read Feelings Buried Alive Never Die. And at the back of that book, if you haven't ever read it, is all the emotions associated with the specific symptoms. And I started looking at it, and my husband was like, that's just bullshit. It's just
Yeah.
random random symptoms with random things, and that could mean anything. But really, when you take a deep dive and then you understand it's connected with the energy systems and the chakras, and specific things manifest because you're feeling certain emotions, and the emotions for the reproductive organs are not feeling safe, not feeling grounded, feeling fear and resentment. And I had a shitload of that going on
Yeah.
for years for me. And every time I would be put in a specific situation, I would have female pain, right? Just stabbing female pain. And I started
Right.
like, noticing the correlation between every time I'm in this situation, I feel this female pain. And and so this awareness was huge for me. So then I could try to regulate my nervous system and say, okay, I see you're feeling not safe. Is it
Yeah.
true that you're not safe? Or is it just your perception of reality is making your cortisol levels go crazy because you're perceiving that you're not safe? And so once I started understanding the emotion of not feeling safe and regulating it, symptoms are gone.
It's almost like you have a you find a magic wand. Did
Mhm.
you have you ever noticed have you ever used these same methods that you use for health for other things in life? Like for me, it was I had to learn to allow my thoughts, my feelings, my symptoms to be there, to acknowledge, my alarms, my feelings, to listen to them, but then engage in life. And I use these same things like when I do visuals. I create my reality. I like to look in the future, and it's almost like a form of getting downloads and manifesting my future. So I all the things that I did to recover, I also use with building a business, relationships, um, being more in tune with my spirituality. Have you noticed that? It's not just about, the health part, it's about other things in your
Yeah.
life?
I mean, they are all one and the same, right? And
Yeah.
and you can't create a different reality without the thinking that the new thoughts and thinking new thoughts makes you take new actions, and
Yeah.
which makes you have different belief systems, and then you have different results because of it. And so when you really dial back everything back down to emotion, which becomes a thought, which becomes a belief, which becomes an action and a result, your life changes in a dramatic way. And so, what I thought was my spiritual religion, my whole life is not
Yeah.
even the same. That's not even one and the same. And to see, uh, without digging too deep in the weeds there, people
Yeah.
still living with the way I grew up and thinking the same thoughts and having the same beliefs, it's maddening to me, and it's frustrating. And I want to say there's so much more. It's like you believe in the medical field, and then you believe in the mind body connection, and there's so much more to everything that than what you are aware of. And so
Yeah.
everything unfolds when you view life differently.
Yeah. Especially when you go through this journey and you overcome it. That's another thing. Some
Mhm.
people, are stuck and they learn only so much, but when you overcome it and you come to the other side, you have so much clarity, especially when you look back.
Oh,
Not when you're in the thick of it. And the thick of it is, it's sometimes it's hard to see all your wins and how far you've come along, but it's usually afterwards where you look back and go, wow, I can't believe I did all that. That's
mhm.
incredible.
Yeah.
So, but when somebody's going to watch this and they're going to get the awareness, what's one thing that you want somebody to know watching this video? Any sort of like tip to, let's say you were watching this. What would you tell yourself? Okay, you're watching this video, you're having awareness, and you got these symptoms. What are you going to tell yourself to do next? Like some good advice.
First of all, it's okay to feel those big feelings. Anger is just as good as love. They're not good or bad. Your emotions are not good or bad. They just are. And
Yeah,
get curious. I would say get curious about why you're angry. Get curious about why you're fearful. I mean, ask these questions. Go deeper. Why? Why are you fearful? Why are you angry? Why are you grieving? And
yeah,
the more you dig into the whys, I mean, uh, ask yourself why 5 times. Why am I angry? And then why? And then why? And then why? And then you can uncover the truth. It's not just it's not just an emotion. There's a belief system way deep under there that you can decide if it's true or not. Because what you're doing is you're just finding enough evidence to be angry. You're just finding enough evidence to grieve. You're just finding enough evidence to be resentful. You can find evidence of the opposing at any time. It's a choice.
Yeah. It's like a big awakening you have within yourself. So you're able to actually take control and be in the driver's seat. When before we're kind of going through life
Mhm.
and we're in a sleep. And this is an awakening. For me, it was, and I was able to see. Now I'm able to see, and this is where we get the magic wand to create the life that we've always dreamed and wanted.
For sure. And it's
Wow.
just you're living more in abundance than and your glass is full or overflowing instead
Yeah.
of empty, you know? And that's I know I meet people random people all the time and they say there's something about you that is appealing to me and I don't know what it is and it's not the way I look, it's not what I say or do. It's just the way I feel. I think energetically people feel at ease and they want to know why. And I mean, I don't know for you. I like to be around people that are at ease most of the day. It's a comfortable feeling. And when you can be more at ease instead of dis-ease,
Yeah.
you're gonna have a different outcome.
Yeah. I've noticed that I'm attracting different people in my life, and I've been cutting out certain people or kind of walking away slowly from a different, it's like I'm jumping into a different quantum reality,
Oh, yeah.
like a different, totally different reality. Like friends I don't really talk too much anymore. And I got these new friends that are supporting the, the beliefs and vibrations that I'm living now.
Mhm.
And even music. My music taste is changing. Like everything's changing. It's like I'm becoming a new person. My old self is, dying.
Mhm. It's a beautiful
It's
thing.
magical. Yeah. Yeah. So this has been awesome. I'm really grateful that you've been on the show. Could you send me the link to that book that you mentioned? Because I'm sure people will be interested. The one with the feelings. I forget
Yes.
which one that.
Feelings Buried Alive Never Die by Carol K. Truman. It's an amazing book.
Perfect. And send me all the links. So if anybody wants to get in touch and connect with you, they can, and I'll put it in the description. And they can reach out to you and get a hold of you.
I
Awesome.
love
Thank you very much for being on the show. This was great.
it. I loved it. Thank you.
Awesome. Bye.